Imagine this. Within the next few minutes, you are going to discover a power so great that it will make people beg you to speak. Does that sound impossible? What if I told you that this power lies not in what you say, but in what you don't say? In today's chaotic world, we are drowning in noise. Every notification screams for attention. Every opinion demands to be heard. Every argument is ready to explode. Patience has run dry. Even a blank stare can instantly turn into a fight. Have you ever wondered, could the most powerful people actually be the ones who remain the most silent? Remember Seneca's words, an empty barrel makes more noise than a full one. Let me share a story that will change the way you think about silence forever. In a small town on the edge of a vast desert, there lived a wise woman. Her wisdom was known to all, but she did not share her answers easily. One day, a young and ambitious merchant came to her, worry written on his face. "How can I earn respect? How can I make people truly value me?" he asked. The wise woman remained silent for a moment. She listened carefully to the young merchant. Then calmly she said, "Come back at dawn tomorrow and follow me," without saying a word. The next morning, the wise woman led the merchant into the desert. Standing among the endless dunes, she asked him to observe how the wind shaped the sand, how the desert commanded respect without uttering a single word. The desert displayed its majesty through its silence. Without speaking, the wise woman had revealed a profound lesson. Stillness can sometimes be more powerful than movement. Silence can leave a deeper mark than words. From that day on, the merchant applied this wisdom to his life. He no longer felt the need to speak constantly or prove himself. Through his silence, his composure, and his ability to act at the right moment, he became the most respected person in town. He watched in awe as his entire life transformed by changing just one thing. In today's video, you will learn how to harness the power of silence in your own life. Over the next 9 lessons, you'll discover why the most powerful people are not those who react to everything, but those who know when to stay silent. And by the end of this video, you will understand why the less you speak, the more respect and attention you command. But before we begin, here's what makes this different from anything you've heard before. These are not just theories. These are Stoic principles that have stood the test of time for over 2,000 years. Principles forged in battle, capable of transforming lives. If you're ready to discover why silence may be your greatest tool, let's begin. One at the power of silence. Have you ever felt so surrounded by noise that you couldn't even hear your own thoughts? As if the clamor of the outside world had invaded the deepest corners of your mind? At some point, you need a dose of silence, one that allows you to turn inward and discover what you may have been ignoring. External noise doesn't just blur our perception of the world, it distorts how we see ourselves. We live in a race toward noise, words, and constant busyness. But who can stop in this race? More importantly, who dares to? In a world where notifications relentlessly demand our attention, where endless conversations fill our minds, and where we try to occupy every empty moment by speaking faster, we cannot help but feel that time is slipping away from us. But what if silence was your most powerful tool? To understand the importance of silence, we need to pause and reflect on what it truly means. It is not just about the absence of speech. Silence is the absence of the noise that disrupts your inner world. It is a refuge where you can finally listen to your deepest thoughts, often drowned out by the stresses of daily life. In other words, silence is not emptiness. It is an opportunity for self-discovery. Throughout history, countless individuals have withdrawn from the chaos of the world to embark on profound journeys of self-understanding. Silent retreats have been an ancient and powerful practice for this very purpose. These retreats allow a person to step back, observe without reacting, and exist without the need to respond. They represent a radical act of stillness. By doing nothing, we create the space to finally do what truly matters. In this age of excessive information and relentless noise, silence becomes a sanctuary amidst the chaos. And yet, when we first encounter it, it can feel unsettling, even terrifying. We have grown accustomed to filling every gap with words, ideas, and sounds. But in silence, there is nowhere to escape. You are left alone with yourself, forced to face the truth within. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "Tranquility is the highest good." But to find this good, one must first learn to be silent. Seneca was not merely speaking about refraining from speech. He was referring to the power of stepping back, to see life from a broader perspective. 2. Listening with the soul. Have you ever noticed how, when someone is speaking, most of us focus more on formulating our response rather than truly listening to what they are saying? It's as if we are programmed to reply rather than to understand, like robots wired for reaction. The essence of listening seems to have been lost, replaced by an almost compulsive need to be the first to respond with an opinion or judgment. Stoic philosophy, the school of thought that constantly emphasizes calmness, reflection, and self-control, teaches us something that seems simple but is incredibly difficult to practice. Do not act on impulse. This pause is not just about controlling our reactions. It is also about how we engage with others. The Stoics believed that, just as emotions should be managed before making decisions, our responses should also wait for the right moment. Can you imagine how many misunderstandings, unnecessary arguments, and awkward moments we could avoid if we simply listened instead of rushing to speak? Of course, this doesn't mean you should always remain silent or be a passive observer of life. On the contrary, it is an invitation to think and listen, not with the intent to respond, but with the intent to understand. When someone is going through a difficult time, my first instinct is to offer a suggestion. If I were you, I'd do this. Or, maybe you should try that. But what if what they truly need isn't advice or a quick fix? What if all they need is to know that someone is willing to listen, without offering solutions, without rushing to solve their problems? This is the power of deep listening. You don't have to have the answers. You just have to be present. Most of the time, people aren't looking for an immediate solution. What they want is a patient ear, one that listens without interrupting, without judgment, and without diminishing their feelings. If we learn to listen this way, our relationships will become deeper and our interactions more genuine. But to achieve this, we must break free from the automatic mode of thinking in which our minds are constantly searching for the next brilliant idea or waiting for the perfect moment to interject. Let's reflect on the wisdom of Stoic philosophy. True wisdom is not found in the words we speak, but in the silence we create between them. 3. The courage to not react. Have you ever noticed how your body seems to have a pre-programmed response when someone makes a provocative comment or when a situation becomes tense? It happens to all of us. But the real question is this: do you ever stop to truly think about your reaction, or do you simply surrender to impulse? Controlling your emotions is not something you can master overnight, but it's also not something you have to postpone mastering for the distant future. It's a skill you can start developing right now. As human beings, we all have a sort of reaction button that gets triggered by minor disruptions, whether it's unwanted criticism, a misinterpreted glance, or a simple misunderstanding. In those moments, our strongest urge is often to react defensively. But what happens when we fail to restrain these impulses? We enter a vicious cycle of quick reactions, ones that rarely solve anything and often make situations worse. Think about a recent time when you reacted without thinking. Maybe it was an argument with someone close to you or a hurtful comment at work. In the end, that immediate reaction likely didn't help. The Stoics understood this well. Their ancient philosophy doesn't sugarcoat the truth. Real strength is not in reacting. It's in knowing when not to react. Rather than battling their emotions, the Stoics observed them, understood them, and determined whether they were worth acting on. They knew that a moment of thought can prevent days of regret. Sometimes all you need is strategic silence. This isn't about punishing others. It's about giving yourself the space to reflect and regain focus. Think of those who remain silent in the midst of conflict. Their very presence exudes a quiet discomfort that unsettles those around them. It's as if they are saying, "I will let you speak, but I will not play your game." This kind of composure proves how powerful silence can be, and this deliberate non-reaction should never be mistaken for weakness. In reality, it is hidden strength. At first, it may feel strange, like you're giving up the chance to defend yourself. But in truth, you will be defending yourself in a far more powerful way, with calmness, intelligence, and above all, dignity. As Epictetus wisely said, "True displays of strength are not in the words you speak, but in the moments you choose to remain silent. 4. Calmness in the storm. Imagine being in the middle of a hurricane. Not a real one, of course, but a metaphorical storm. The kind that arises when everything in your life seems to be falling apart. Your family's giving you a headache. Your job feels like a battlefield, and your friends, if you can still call them that, make you wonder whether they support you or just seek entertainment. And there you are, trapped in this storm of emotions, thoughts, and stress, unsure if you'll be able to stay afloat. Now imagine that instead of panicking or running away, you pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and rather than being swept away by the chaos, you become its center. Yes, I know this might sound like cheap self-help advice, but what if I told you that there is real wisdom in this? Something the Stoics both understood and practiced. Remaining calm in the midst of chaos is more than just a psychological trick. It is a survival strategy. But not just any strategy. It's the ability to step back, to remain silent while everyone else shouts, to avoid being carried away by emotional currents. It's an inner stillness that allows you to make rational decisions rather than acting on impulse. You've probably learned this the hard way more than once. Let's consider a simple example. You're at a tense family dinner. Everyone is defending their opinions, bringing up past conflicts. Voices are rising, and the argument is escalating. The room is filled with tension, and you, feeling the urge to say something, to correct the conversation, or to defend yourself, are caught in the middle of it. But at that moment, you make a different choice. You step back. You don't say anything. Instead, you take a deep breath and quietly observe. You notice why people are getting so worked up, which emotions are driving the conversation. The argument continues for a while, but eventually people tire themselves out. Silence starts to settle in. And then, in that moment, you calmly and clearly say a few words that ease the tension. Suddenly, there is a shift in the atmosphere. People listen to you. Your voice, rising with serenity amidst the noise, is perceived as a guiding force. Perhaps what you say ends an argument or offers emotional support to a family member who needs it. Your silence has created an island of calm within the chaos, carrying the power to resolve even the most complex situations. This is where the power of silence truly reveals itself. The ability to observe before speaking, the patience to wait for the right moment, and the capacity to stop the storm with a well-placed message. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what we can control and to accept what we cannot. The idea here is to let the emotional winds blow as they will, but not allow them to carry you away. Stay centered because your true strength lies in that silence. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, tranquility is not the absence of a storm, but the ability to remain steady in the midst of one. 5. The wisdom of observation. Have you ever considered that what you truly need might not be to have an answer for everything, but rather to learn how to stay silent? Yes, it may sound strange because we are so accustomed to being the main character in our own movie that the idea of being an observer might seem dull. But have you noticed how many times your emotions have overflowed simply because you didn't know how to step back? In a world where everyone is shouting their opinions and demanding quick responses, the art of quiet observation is often lost. When faced with a difficult situation, our first instinct is to react, defend, or intervene. But the Stoic wisdom, which many consider a harsh philosophy, invites us to do something much simpler: to step back. A truly observant mind is like an audience member at a theater. It doesn't allow itself to be carried away by the plot, yet it understands the story better than anyone else. This approach requires great discipline because remaining silent when everyone around you expects you to speak is not easy. Sometimes the best action is to do nothing at all. If you resist the urge to rush in, to interfere, or to act, this space of stillness will open a door to a deeper understanding of what is happening around you. Imagine yourself as a bridge between external events and your internal reactions, rather than being emotionally entangled in every situation or conversation. Does this sound absurd? Let me tell you something. Most of your problems don't come from what happens to you, but from how you react to it. If you allow yourself to be swept away by everything that affects you, you become a ping pong ball in a game with no rules. But if you learn to observe without judgment, your mind becomes a much more powerful tool. Start with something simple. Whenever you feel irritated by a situation, give yourself permission to step back. You don't need to do anything extraordinary or become a Tibetan monk. Just observe. What are you feeling? Why do you feel this way? Do you really need to react right now? Or can you afford to wait? You may be surprised to find that when the world expects you to speak and you choose silence instead, people will often start asking for your opinion. And in that moment, you hold all the power, not because you forced it, but because you allowed yourself the opportunity to see things from a different perspective. 6. When silence speaks louder. Sometimes words are unnecessary. You already know this. There are moments when the smartest thing you can do is to remain silent while everything around you takes its course. This is interesting because we live in a society that constantly tells us we must talk, express, and prove ourselves. But what happens when you simply stay quiet? I'm not talking about awkward silences or the kind that feel like a long, empty pause between hello and goodbye. I'm talking about the kind of silence that speaks far more than words, the kind that transforms into a powerful response, like an invisible but forceful slap, the kind of silence that is unforgettable. Perhaps you've experienced this yourself. You're in the middle of a conversation, and you can feel that the argument is heading down a dead-end road. You know there's no point in continuing, yet the other person won't stop talking. Worse still, you start realizing that every word you say only makes things worse. So why not take a step back and let silence speak for you? It turns out that nothing unsettles people more than deep silence. How is it possible that someone who remains quiet during a confrontation or disagreement can leave a stronger impact than the person who keeps arguing? In these moments, silence acts as a mirror. It reflects back to the other person what they truly need to see, but may not want to acknowledge. Think about times when, instead of continuing an argument, you simply chose not to respond. How did the other person react? More often than not, silence tests people's patience. It forces them to actually think about what they're saying. Even more importantly, it teaches you that your value isn't measured by what you say, but by what you choose not to say. This isn't about being passive or submissive. It's about knowing when to engage and when to let silence speak on your behalf. Because Stoics understand that not everything requires a response. In fact, often the most powerful response is the one that is never given. Silence is not emptiness. It is filled with answers. The person who remains silent is not weak, but steady. And within this space of silence, instead of losing control, you find yourself. At first, the other person may not understand your silence, but eventually they will realize that it is far more effective than any shouting match or meaningless words. 7. The art of letting go. Have you ever felt that every time you try to hold on to something or someone, your life becomes more complicated? As if, no matter how hard you try, everything keeps slipping through your fingers, and stress comes crashing down on you like an unstoppable wave. But what if I told you that the secret lies in letting go, in stepping back? Yes, I know it sounds like something straight out of a cheap self-help book, but hear me out. What they don't tell you is that letting go is actually one of the most powerful actions you can take. Walking away doesn't mean shutting down your emotions or giving up on the things you love. Rather, it means recognizing that what you love does not own you. If you constantly chase after everything you think you need, you may be missing out on the peace that could be yours. If only you could loosen your grip a little. Of course, holding on is the easy part. Letting go is where the challenge lies. But here's the key. Letting go is not a loss, it is a liberation. It's as if the moment you stop clinging, you suddenly gain more clarity and control. Imagine for a moment that you're in a never-ending argument. You know what I mean? Those debates that are really just about proving who's right rather than solving anything meaningful. The impulse is to keep talking, to add more arguments, to raise your voice. But what if instead you took a step back and remained silent? Not out of cowardice, but out of understanding. Stoic philosophy speaks a lot about this kind of detachment, not in a romantic or spiritual sense, but in a practical, grounded way. The Stoics did not retreat to the mountains to meditate or preach detachment as if it were a magical cure for all problems. What they taught was this: letting go means accepting what you cannot control and focusing on what you can. Letting go is not about abandoning what you love, but freeing yourself from the weight of expectations and anxieties that people and circumstances create. And if you release those expectations, you will discover an inner peace beyond what you ever imagined. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. If it were easy, we wouldn't be searching the internet for quick solutions or buying books that promise to free us from everything that binds us. But once you understand the power of stepping back, you'll realize that you're not losing anything. Instead, what you gain is a kind of peace, one that no person and no situation can ever take away from you. 8. Transformative patience. How many times have you wanted to speed things up in your life? We all fall into the trap of believing that waiting is the same as being passive, as if it were a wasted moment. But let me tell you something. What many see as the abyss of inaction is, for others, an opportunity to observe, to think, and to act more wisely. This is where real strength comes from. That often dismissed patience is, in reality, the answer, especially when you feel overwhelmed by the pressure to have everything right now. Imagine yourself in a conversation. The other person is speaking, but you're not truly listening. You're just waiting for your turn to respond, eager to share your own thoughts. And what happens? The dialogue moves too fast. You miss important details, and in the end, you say things you would never have said if you had taken a moment to pause. Now, what if you did the opposite? What if, instead of rushing, you stepped back, remained silent for a while, and took your time? Suddenly, what seemed like a simple response transforms into deeper understanding. This principle is as old as time itself. The Stoics, for example, understood the power of waiting perfectly. For them, patience wasn't just about enduring or surviving. It was a form of wisdom, a method of thinking before acting. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Modern life is full of pressure to move quickly, to decide instantly, to avoid wasting time. But in reality, true power doesn't come from quick reactions. It comes from wise responses. And those responses often arise not from rushing, but from stepping back and observing. I'm not telling you to become a hermit or to wait endlessly without taking action. What I'm suggesting is that, more often than not, real strength lies in not rushing, in allowing things to unfold naturally. Take a step back, remain silent, and you may be surprised to find that, at some point, people will start begging for your response. The power of patience and waiting is not just a philosophical idea. It is a practical, powerful tool that all of us can use in our daily lives. As Nelson Mandela once said, waiting is not the absence of action. It is about seeing the right moment to act. 9. The peace of acceptance. Have you ever felt torn between cursing your fate or hiding under the covers, wishing to escape from everything? That intense frustration when you realize that no matter how hard you try to change something, it remains out of your reach. It's as if the world has lined up obstacles in your path just to showcase its unfairness. But what if I told you that the deepest transformation doesn't come from controlling what you can, but from deciding how you perceive what you cannot change? Let me introduce you to acceptance. That simple yet seemingly complicated concept. The truth is, accepting what we cannot change is not surrender. Instead, it is a step toward a calm space where we can see things with greater clarity. Now, if we add a bit of Stoic philosophy into this mix, we find a powerful ally. I'm not talking about giving up on everything. I'm talking about understanding that some things are simply beyond our control. The Stoics taught that while we cannot change what is outside our control, we can always control how we respond to it. The key? A non-judgmental perspective, one that observes without rushing to label things as good or bad. Acceptance allows us to witness events without letting our emotions take absolute control. It invites us to be more aware, to see beyond the small dramas of the present moment, and to adopt a broader perspective. How can we practice acceptance? First, by reminding ourselves that not everything needs to be fixed, resolved, or changed immediately. By giving yourself permission to accept what is, you free yourself from the exhausting burden of trying to control every little detail. Second, by allowing inner silence, the kind that over time becomes a tool far more powerful than any defense mechanism. And finally, by being patient, because deep change never happens overnight. As the ancient sages taught, peace is not found by changing the world, but by changing how you see it. If you've made it this far, write in the comments. You are more valuable for your silence. Because silence is more than just an action. It is a stance. When you remain silent, thoughts speak louder than words. This makes you a more understanding, deeper, and more effective individual. Your comment will show that you are part of a community that understands the power of silence, helping this message reach more people. Discovering the power of silence is not just about observing, it's about bringing a real transformation into your life. Share in the comments what you've learned from this video or how silence has impacted your life. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue this philosophical journey with us. Your support is my biggest motivation in creating these contents. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. And remember, sometimes silence speaks louder than the most powerful words.